doing very well for himself. Can we give a quick round of applause and welcome to Adam?
Okay, cheers.
I'll get you to grab this seat here.
Thanks.
So I had a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we've only got about an hour to present. I don't even know if this microphone's working. But one of the first questions I had is, so you're mergers and acquisitions lawyer. Have you seen American Psycho?
I have, yeah. It was a while ago, but...
Do you actually stand around with business cards and compare them?
I was an M&A lawyer about 11 years ago, so no more, 12 years ago now.
Right.
So
is that when it came out, the movie with Christian?
I think it came out before then. But I remember I saw it at home, not at the movies. But I was a pretty junior lawyer, so I never reached the heights of anything great. But
so you basically used Aussie Commerce to do all your acquisitions.
The M&A stuff I did at Freehills was sort of multi-billion-dollar big stuff. So I was mostly photocopying and filing and doing some pretty boring stuff. So it was never, it wasn't glamorous work, and I lasted a couple of years there, and I was never going to become a great lawyer. So I don't think anybody was crying when I left Freehills from Freehills. So
on to bigger and better things. No, that's great. I actually watched one of your interviews a little while ago, and thought it was really interesting the pathway you took, because you sort of went from being an M&A lawyer, which is, most of the customers at Bravo, they're sort of domain experts. Some of them are, investors, people from all kinds of different backgrounds. But law isn't. I mean, sometimes you get finance as well, but law isn't one that we get so much of. And obviously, Aussie Commerce has gone and acquired quite a few organisations, and it's really played into your story. And I'm really curious to sort of explore that as well. But how about we start from the beginning and go from there? And because the apartment stuff really interests me. I think you set up a few apartments, and that was sort of your beginning that bankrolled what would later lead to Aussie Commerce. How about you give us a brief run over of that?
Yeah, I guess like any and probably a lot of people in the room, I think the toughest thing in starting a business, obviously, having money to fund it. And I guess we were looking. So I was a lawyer, as I said, in 03, 04, and we didn't have any specific ideas initially, but Jeremy, who's been my business partner since then, who went to school with, he wanted to do something business-wise. I was really happy at Freehills, but figured it wasn't going to be the long-term career for me. So we had our eyes open for stuff. And at the time, I had a partner at the time, a girlfriend at the time, who was originally from Scotland, and she had a couple of mates come over from Scotland, and they were staying at a place in Grey Street. And we happened to pick them up one night to go somewhere, and I walked up to this apartment, and we went in, and it was an absolute dump. And there was 5 people in there, a guy who looked like a rapist, and there was there was a big guy, just unkept, and there was crap everywhere. It was a place you wouldn't want to live. And I asked the girls, so what are you guys paying for this? And they said, we pay $150 a week each. And I did a quick calc, and it says 5 people for $750 a week. This place was a dump, so maybe it cost them $300 rent. So I thought, well, there's some guy here who's making $450 a week for putting a rapist with these 3 girls. So I called Jez and said, I reckon, why don't we try this? And he said, oh yeah, that's not a bad idea. At that time, he was about to resign from ANZ and come back to Melbourne. He was in Sydney. And so we started our first apartment. So Jez on the ANZ bulletin board saw this apartment in the city, in what is the Grand Hotel on Spencer Street near Collins Street. And it was $390 a week, and it had two car parks included. So we went to them. It was a sublease break. So we went to with the person who owned the apartment, showed us through, and we ended up renting it for $390 a week and had the 2 car parks. And we went literally, and Jez was away at the time. My dad's a builder and had a trailer. And so I drove this trailer around to Clayton and wherever, and picked up fridges, all these secondhand stuff for not much. And I barely knew how to drive a trailer, so I couldn't turn it around. So I'd drive somewhere, I'd turn the car around, take out the trailer, put the trailer back on. It was literally as close to amateur night as you'd ever see. And we were able to furnish this apartment for $1,000 because it was such a lean. We wanted to save every dollar we had. We didn't know if the concept would work. So when we went, we thought, well, how are we going to market this thing? So we went round to internet cafes, and they had most internet cafes. I don't know if internet cafes still exist, but in the time you go to this internet cafe, and there'd be almost always have a notice board, and people would advertise crap on there. So we'd make this literally the old style ad where you rip the bottom, you cut it out and rip it off. and we put them up and we rip everybody else's off and put ours up there, and then they'd come and rip ours off, we'd put them ours back, and we went round. So Jez was a bad driver. I'd drive around the car, stop, get out, put the thing in, go around. It was like a Benny Hill movie, and we advertised that way. And the first time was the first apartment we furnished on Cup Week, so almost 11 years ago, Cup Week 2004, and we furnished it. So it cost about $1,000 to furnish it. It was sort of a 3-bedroom place, and we had all these people come through, so like an open house, and we ended up leasing it to these 5 English guys, I think they were, and they were pretty nice guys, and we had these 2 car parks, leased them separately, and I think in the end we ended up getting like $800 or $750 a week in rent for it. So it did a bit like that guy in St Kilda was doing. So we figured, well, this actually could be a quick sums, $400 times 52 is 20 grand a year plus a bit of cost. But so, this could actually be a business that we could start with not much money. So we did a second apartment, and that was a foot furnished place. And then I took a leave of absence from Freehills back in April 2005. And that was sort of how we started, and then we gradually ramped up the business. So we had about 70 grand, about 100 grand between us, I think, and we pretty much poured every last dollar into this business as we rolled out apartment by apartment. And the beauty of it was a bit different to like a marketplace or one of those businesses now, is we could roll out apartment and we'd fill one apartment, then set up another one, and fill that one and set up another one, and sort of rolled out that way to the point we had about 40 apartments at one stage in that backpacker style business, and then we obviously pivoted across.
Mm. Yeah, I rent out one of my rooms to international travellers, and I'm thinking, the math is fantastic. Never works out like that. People come and go every 2 or 3 months, and the turnover is really high, and yeah, it's really interesting. So I guess I found that really interesting because that was what financed Aussie Commerce. Well, the beginning of the next business that you got onto. So yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about what that looked like, particularly the early stages. I think how many entrepreneurs we got in the room working on businesses? Okay, cool. I like how people put their hands up after they saw other people putting their hands up. That stage of getting to cash flow positive is really tough for a lot of guys. Even at Bravo, we see customers, they build a great product, they even iterate, and they come up with a really good concept, but actually getting off the ground and marketing it, you might have 100,000 for development of an application, but then you've got to spend 400K or whatever it is, just ballpark figures here, on actually marketing that and getting it to the customer, and that's just MVP, and you've got to go from there. So I guess, long story short, when was it that it changed from being into real estate, well, I guess renting apartments, to actually building an online business? Because they're entirely different structures.
Yeah, it's a good question. So as we had this backpacker apartment business, and we realised pretty soon that, after a couple of years anyway, that it wasn't necessarily the best business renting to backpackers, because you get all sorts. You get some really good ones, and you get some people that smash holes in walls. So we realised, well, why don't we pivot across to a corporate style of apartment? Because most corporate people are probably a bit more responsible, or they pay more in any event. So even if they bash a hole in the wall, they pay for it. So we pivot across to the corporate style apartments, and we start. This is about in 2007. The Melbourne apartment rental market really tightened up. So in the early 2000s, there was a glut of apartments. Then sort of as 2005, 2006, 2007, they stopped building, and it dried up completely. So we noticed we were struggling to rent apartments. So we thought, well, for continuing to supply, and also because we could positively gear these things, we bought half a dozen apartments. This is the days pre-GFC, so we get 95% loans from banks. We took out $2 million in finance with not much collateral at all, and obviously mortgage insured. We bought these 6 properties. Now we didn't intend to flip them. We intended to buy them, and we could positively gear because we got a higher yield than a normal landlord. So we had these 6 apartments, and the apartment market started to catch up to the housing market. So between 2007 and 2009, the apartment market really improved, and they started building again. So we saw the yields sort of stop going up so much. We thought, well, now's probably actually a pretty good time to sell. We were pretty bearish on property, and we flogged off the half a dozen apartments in probably 2008, 2009, 2010, and had about 2008, 2009, and had about $1 million in cash that we'd managed to win a Tesla Lotto almost, by getting this $1 million in cash for zero skill and just buying these apartments. So we had this $1 million, and we had this apartment business that, whilst a nice business, it was turning over a couple of $1 million, and it was okay, and we got a little bit of cash out of it. But it wasn't a business that we were ever going to really want to grow old on. It was pretty hard work.
Only a couple of million. Yeah, I know.
So totally. It wasn't an overly profitable business. It was it was every time we wanted to set up an apartment, we'd get the furniture delivered, and I'd literally probably set up 1,000 flat pack furniture. I'm pretty good at setting up flat pack furniture now if anybody needs anything done. But so it wasn't a business that we really wanted to do forever, but it was a nice business. So we thought, well, we've got this business, and what can we do? What can we do that's more scalable? And we were about 28, 29 at the time. We had an idea, and we actually spent a bit of time working on this property software management thing. So we thought one of the issues we had, and most of our ideas come to us sort of serendipitously, like the rapist backpacker thing. And we had this idea. We thought whenever we wanted to get, because we rented through agents, like anyone here would. So whenever, I'm not sure if anybody has the issue, but say something breaks in your house and you email the agent and they take forever to get it fixed because they might pass on to the tradesman then stuffs it up, doesn't call you back, or something always goes wrong in the chain because there's too many links and then nobody really cares. So I thought, well, why don't we try and make this system a bit more accountable? So it automatically emails, we can have preset limits and just make it a bit easier. So we spent a while developing that, and we thought the system was pretty good. Problem is agents just couldn't be stuffed. So we didn't really research our target market that well because agents had no real motivation to participate in this. They had minimal benefits and they had to pay. So whilst we thought it was a good idea in part, it was a bad idea in most part because commercially it was never going to work. So we shelved that, and we were constantly looking for something new. And this is in 09, so we had this $1 million burning a hole in our pocket, and it was just sitting in the bank. We didn't want to buy houses, and we don't spend that much money, so it was sort of just sitting there. And
can I just quickly ask, building that product, how much did that cost to develop, and over what period of time?
Probably cost, I don't know, 30, 40 grand. And it probably spent 6 months,
yeah.
8 months.
Looking back at that, what would you have done differently? I mean, you talked about research and marketing.
Probably not that. Probably maybe asked agents a bit more closely. We spoke to some agents at the time and asked them, but maybe it would have got like what a lot of real estate businesses do is give equity to some agents and get their real buy-in. Maybe that would have been worthwhile.
I'm only asking that question because my boss is a researcher. He'd kick my ass if I didn't.
It's probably the product wasn't that great either. So there's probably multiple problems with that. But it was a great experience for us in getting something done. And whilst it was obviously cash that we didn't utilise, we then utilised that developer for other stuff. So it was a good taste for us to start developing. Neither me or Jeremy were coders or never coded a line in our lives. So it was a good. All we'd done is sort of basic front end website stuff with other guys. So it was a good experience for us. And I think we put that whole 04 to 09 period down to our second university degree. So we both had university degrees, but this was our real life degree and our degree in how to run a business. So it was... and
this was 2004, 2005?
We started 05, April 05 officially, and I've sort of just fast forwarded to pretty much mid-09, really. So that was that. It felt like longer at the time, but that was that period where... So there was me, Jeremy, a mate of ours, Mum, who worked with us, and then we hired Martine, who's still with us, to help run the property business. So it was great fun, and we liked doing it, but I think we had sort of higher motivations, higher ambitions, I should say. And we were just on the lookout for other ideas we could do. And then, so it was mid-09, and this is back in the day where a lot of people worked in the UK. I think it's happening again now. So I had a lot of mates who are in the UK. Lawyers and bankers and all that kind of stuff were there, and I had a mate that was over there, and they were doing a boat cruise in Croatia. So I was newly single then, so I went over there, and he was staying in London, and I had other mates in London, and they were using this. But I said, one of my mates said, "Oh, why don't we go out for dinner?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." And he goes, "Oh, I'll look on Top Table." I said, "Well, what's Top Table?" He said, "Oh, it's a website where you get restaurant discounts." I said, "Oh, that's pretty good." And so Top Table, if anybody's heard of it, it's since been bought by OpenTable, and that was bought by, I think, TripAdvisor potentially, or Priceline bought OpenTable. But it's a bit like if you know Dimmy, which is a restaurant booking site, but it had a discount engine behind it. So if you've heard of the entertainment book, it's almost the cost between Dimmy and the entertainment book. So so you type in your postcode or you look on a map, and restaurants would give discounts to customers for...
Oh, that was that big fat book that would have all these discounts in it.
Yeah, and it's still around. So this Top Table business was a really good business. So you get great deals on restaurants, and restaurants could maximise their serving and their occupancy. So I used this a few times while I was over there, and I said, "Cheers! So this is actually a pretty good idea. Why don't we roll this out in Australia?" And this is about September 09. And he said, "Yeah, it's not a bad idea. We'll try it." So the guy who developed the property management stuff started developing this site. We called it My Table. And we started speaking to a handful of restaurants, but really working on the tech. And the tech was going to take about 6 months. The thing with that My Table business is it's a pretty classical marketplace. So we couldn't launch it till we had probably 1,000 restaurants at least signed up. So if we had 20 restaurants, if you typed in a postcode, whatever, I don't know what this is, typed in Paran, and 3 restaurants came up or 1 restaurant came up, people would never come back. So we knew that was always going to be a challenge with the business. So we started doing that, and a few months later, Jez went to Harvard to what's called audit a course. So sitting on the back of the classroom, basically, and not pay for it. So Jez was in Harvard and getting this free Harvard course and watching the morning show and saw this business called Groupon. And he emails me and said, "Oh, have you heard of this group? Oh, check out this Groupon thing." I said, "Oh, this looks like a shit idea." And he said, "Oh, look a bit more closely." And I said, "Oh, what are these guys taking 5% margins?" Because Groupon was then what it is now. It was 6 months old. And he goes, "No, I take 50%. I said, "Hold on, this actually could be quite a good business, but the name sucks." So we naturally named our business Zoupon. And we thought, well, we got this My Table thing, which is a marketplace. It's going to take a while to build and cost a lot. We'd probably have to blow all that $1 million on this My Table thing. So we thought, well, why don't we try this Zoupon thing first? There'd been no Groupon clones at the time. This is late 2009. So we thought, we'll build this Zoupon, and then once we have a customer base, we'll then launch My Table and leverage the customers across. In early 2010, we registered Zoupon in 15 January 2010 and started working on the site.
Was that in Melbourne?
That was in Melbourne, yeah.
In Melbourne, okay. Yeah, wow, okay. I forgot my next question. So obviously a lot's happened since then. It sounds like Aussie Commerce is really growing. And obviously your mergers and acquisitions experience has sort of played out, buying a few organisations. And I'm really interested to see why you're acquiring. Is it for staff? Is it for customers? Is it for technology? Because obviously we were talking about it before. When you've got 8 or 9 different websites, which is what you have now, and they're these huge sites, you've now got to integrate the back end, and it's not as easy as it sounds. You've got all these websites, these archaic old systems, and you've got to smash them together and make it work and make sure the customers are happy. So I was actually talking to another fella tonight as well, and he said that when he's launching an app on the App Store, if it's broken, he's got no way of testing that. So the technology, I think, is something that people really probably take for granted in some ways. How's that all played out in terms of putting those 8 or 9 websites together?
I think we have about 15 websites now. Actually, we've sort of grown a bit, but
since we last spoke? Or?
No, I think it's probably just I gave you some dodgy info in the first place. But our first acquisition, so we started in 2010, and the business grew pretty quickly. But we realised that the Groupon local part of the business was not as scalable as we thought, because we wanted this business that was scalable. It was national business, but the problem and this was borne out with Groupon, as you've seen by its share price dropping 78, 80%, is it relies on a really heavy sales team. So it's a nice business in many ways, but it's localised. So you need a local sales team speaking to local merchants. So we figured pretty early days that traditional e-commerce, obviously products, so Amazon, eBay is traditional e-commerce. So that was a business we could expand to, and also travel was an area we were doing really well in. And whilst travel is virtual, it's also national or global. And travel is the biggest e-commerce business in the world. So we realised we needed to pivot away from this local business. At the same time, there was a business called UFA, which was a Sydney-based business. So back in mid-2012, so we'd grown a bit, but the business it wasn't flatlining, but the growth had slowed, and we're having issues with the local stuff. So this UFA business in Sydney, we're having different kind of issues, and we thought, why don't we put these businesses together? We were competing against Groupon, Living Social, 2 big US businesses, Kudo, Spritz, our deal owned by big media companies. So we didn't have the capital to compete with these guys. So we thought, we'll bring these 2 businesses together. We were the biggest independent, they were the second. And we thought, we'll get double the scale. And they had a technology platform that was a bit more advanced than ours. So we went to their technology platform. So the very first deal we did was a real scale thing. So we figure, if you've got a sales guy going and speaking to Johnny's Pizza Shop, they can speak for us, they can speak for UFA. So we could rationalise the workforce to a degree, merge technologies, all that kind of stuff. So that was the very first one we did. Basically runs our M&A and also
so it actually worked out the acquisition.
Absolutely. It was partly an acqui-hire, and it was a really good acqui-hire because we got a fantastic guy, and before that it was me doing a bunch of jobs and a few other really good people doing a bunch of jobs, but that was, I guess, it allowed technology to be handed off and marketing that Josh was
well,
really
you're consolidating. So all the shared services, your marketing, your technology, your design can come together, and you can probably reduce your costs.
Yeah,
I imagine.
absolutely.
You probably keep the sales teams the same size, Is that right?
No, there's a bit of rationalisation in sales teams, but not huge because they were better in Sydney, we were better in Melbourne, so there was bits and pieces. And this sort of carried through with our acquisition since. We don't buy businesses to strip them down and sack the staff. We try and keep as many staff as we can. And I'll go into a bit more later about why. So we bought this Uber business, and literally a week later, Josh said, I've heard about this business that's being sold by Rocket. And I'm sure everybody here, well, most people have heard of Rocket Internet, now a $9 billion incubator out of Germany. But they've had a few businesses in Australia that haven't probably gone as well as their European businesses. And they have this business called Delaney, which was part of Westwing. So Westwing's a smashing business globally, $1 billion valuation. It's a flash homewares business, based on One Kings Lane. And they were shutting the Delaney business in Australia because they just had a big raise and it was peripheral for what they needed. So they'd actually terminated all the staff. And they tried to sell it, nobody else wanted it. We ended up paying not much at all, and we said, well, this business actually fits in well.
They wanted about $8 million.
I don't know what they wanted, but we paid a lot less than that. So it was basically scrap because they shut the business down. So whatever we gave them was more than they would have got a week later. So we hired back, they had 50 staff, we hired back the best sort of 15, 16, of which a big chunk are still with us. And Lexi, who was running logistics, is now running our products business and one of our absolute stars. So we got, apart from getting a great business, we got a superstar manager, which was one of the great sort of fringe benefits of an acquisition. And it really taught us that you can get, it's not just the members that you're buying some really talented people. And Rocket are amazing at getting great staff, incidentally, one of their great strengths. But so we bought this, so a week after we did UFA, we each had to buy this business in a week because they'd shut it down. So we just did one massive merger and we did another one a week later. And this was a product-based business, so there's a lot of integration work. So we're integrating our two websites, then we had to integrate this other website as well. So it was a huge period of turmoil in a way, in terms of from a tech perspective. Cash flow wise, it was probably our lowest ebb in the business. So deals had always, Zoopom had become deals by then, had always made money pretty much. And that was a really difficult period. That 6 months back end of 2012 was absolutely a difficult period. And you sort of see, you don't really, till you go through it, you don't really understand it, especially because we had a really successful business before that. And it was still making money, but we had all these extra costs, all these debts that came on. And we sailed pretty close to the wind at one stage, and we're pretty conservative guys, but it was pretty worrying at the time, and we certainly learned our lessons from it. And we got there. We made it by a month probably, and everything just clicked sort of a few months later. But there was certainly a period where we thought we'd overstretched. We bought two businesses in 2 weeks, so it was a huge amount.
Like one on Monday, one on Tuesday.
Pretty much. And it was a whole lot of new people, new office in Sydney. I was going up to Sydney, so it was a difficult period. It was an interesting period. So it was sort of the start of our M&A run. Was merging with UFA and buying the Delaney. So Delaney became the home, and under Lexi's management, we got an amazing buyer. Stacey, who's one of the best, probably the best homewares buyer in the country, and those two senior managers who are also shareholders in our business turned the home. So when we bought Delaney, it was turning over a couple $100,000 a month and losing a couple $100,000 a month. So not a great business. And now that business alone makes almost $2 million a month in revenue and has been profitable for over a year. And we've got a part of, we bought Brands Exclusive later on, and that, so combined our homewares business turns over just under $3 million a year, probably 2.8 a year, which makes it, you may have heard of a business called Temple & Webster. We're about the same size as Temple, and they've been a dedicated homewares business, and that was obviously one of our businesses.
I'm really interested about the acquisition stuff, because to me, I was a developer, so I'm a computer nerd, and you sort of look at running your own business. You want to start it from the start. It's your idea. You got to fund it, bootstrap it. At some point, you might take investment, which you didn't do. It was all organic or through acquisitions. What I'm really curious to know is, what are some of the struggles you had with acquiring companies, because it never really works out. You have these rosy pictures of what is, and I've never done an acquisition, I've never been a part of one, but that's what I hear, is that they have this great vision of, we're going to build these synergies in the tech department, merge technologies, reduce expenses, and the CFO loves that because they love cost cutting, and bring everything together and build an ultimate company. Actually, in your book, you talked about a roll-up strategy, and that's one way to compete against really big competitors, is just to acquire more and more companies. And my friend Christian, who's here tonight, there he is. He's actually explaining to me. I'm not a finance guy; he's a banker, and he's talking about how if you're acquiring companies and you can leverage debt, how it can inflate the share price, and that's what ABC learning did before it crashed, you know. But yeah, I'm just really interested to sort of get a better picture of some of the issues that you guys faced when you're doing acquisitions, and some of the things that popped up that you just had no idea were going to happen.
It's a really good question, and we've done quite a few acquisitions now, and it was. So after we did the home, the next one we did was a business called Kudo, and that was bought from 9MSN, who I'm sure people have probably heard of. So 9MSN were obviously a child of Microsoft and Nine, so it was always a strange negotiating partner, these guys. So they had to get approval from two parents. They said since Nine took it completely, but back then they were joint. So that was a really difficult acquisition in terms of buying it in the first place. And then once we bought it, that was our first big acquisition. So they had about, I'm just off the top of my head, 55 staff. We had about 50 at the time, so virtually doubled our workforce literally overnight. So that was a massive step. They were quite, in many ways, corporatised. So they had their own, obviously, different office. So we sort of strolled into that. I remember strolling into the Kudo office, and they looked at me like, "Who the hell is this bloke who's just bought us?" And so we spoke to them, and there's two clear work streams in any acquisition, and there's the tech side that you referred to, which almost goes without saying. So they've got a platform, we've got a platform, we've got to bring them together, and that involves getting their data on our platform because we don't keep the acquirer platform. And the second part, arguably the more important part, is the people. And the real challenge is keeping the people, the best people around. And say in a business like Kudo that had 55 people, there's probably 15 absolute superstars, 20 pretty good, and 20 take or leave. And the real challenge is working out who's in which group and really making sure you look after the stars. And these are the people who are going to be getting poached by other people who are going to be approached, who may have been underpaid and you need to work something out there, and who also are just concerned about their job. So we did one-on-ones and group and all that kind of stuff, and we certainly learned a lot from that we applied for subsequent acquisitions like Living Social and Brands Exclusive, just how important. And we were able, for Kudo, to keep most people around, so we're quite lucky there, but just how important it is keeping the right people around to maintain revenue, to maintain systems, for finance, all that kind of stuff. So it was a really good learning experience. The tech guys did a really good job. So they integrated the Kudo business in a month, and then they had a business called Getaway Lounge when we were starting a business called Luxury Escape. So we integrated that in 2 months, so a month after. So that was a super quick process. We probably went too hard. We didn't do enough. We probably didn't keep enough of Kudo's eccentricities in a way, and we, as a result, lost a bit of revenue, but also were able to synergise costs quicker. So we certainly learned from that when we did Living Social this year on sort of exactly what to do, what not to do. So we're not perfect at it yet, but we've definitely gotten a lot better than we were 2013, which is when we did the Kudo one. But yeah, we've got a tech team that's now pretty good at the data import stuff and making sure the fields are right and all that kind of stuff. And then we've got a sort of a finance team and an operations team that do the operations, and everybody sort of works together to get it done. And the real key is having good people at the new business, because if you've got good people who you can work with at the new business, it makes it so much easier. Yep.
Yeah, cool. I think every company has a different acquisition strategy. Just listening to this story, my father's company was acquired, and he was at one point Victoria's largest nurses agency. So they provide casual nurses to hospitals. So they might say, we need a Div 1 psych nurse, and my father had a register of tens of thousands of nurses. And this is back in 1980s when they were pioneering the IT revolution. So they literally went from paper to these sort of DOS operator systems, and to make a box on screen, it's all these equal signs, and then you do a little line pipe down the side, and that was the application. And so my father's business was acquired, and what they realised afterwards, because his partner stayed on board on the company, and what they realised is that the people who acquired him, it was large. I mean, they're a $100 million organisation, huge health organisation. Is that they actually would have paid a lot more, about 4 or 5 times the amount, which was about 20 mil that my dad missed out on when he sold his business. And what he realised is their mergers and acquisition strategy was actually to look at all these different potential acquisition targets, lowball all of them. I'm presuming this is what was happening, and then to see who would buy, who wants to leave now, who's got kids, who's got health issues, who wants to just get out of the business, and then they've just bought themselves a bargain. So they say, well, we want to buy you on a 3.5 times multiple of earning, and but it's not nearly worth. It's worth a lot more to the organisation that's acquiring, because they've got technology, they've got existing customers, all this goodwill and assets. 3.5 times multiple represents nothing they're buying. So it sounds like you were obviously in a very niche marketplace where you've got a few players and you really don't have a pick of 20 or 30 different groups. So I just thought I'd give you a break from talking and just share that. But that's really interesting. So you said in 2016 you guys are targeting 250 mil in 1 year, which is pretty cool. And I sent out an email to everyone. I said, it's not very often we get Australians creating $200 million companies, and not very often we get them speaking and sharing their insights. So I thought that was really cool. That's what I was really excited about today. The problem being that we've only got an hour, as I said. So when you guys broke the $100 million barrier, did you have a cap that had no hairs on it and do like?
It's
you've seen Austin Powers, right?
Yeah. I love Austin Powers. It's I was working at Jam Factory when Austin Powers 2 came out, actually, which is a classic. But
so you're working at Jam Factory?
Yeah,
at Village.
Yeah, so not far from here. So
yeah.
Funny enough, one of my manager at the time was a guy called Radek Sali, who you may have heard of, is CEO of Swiss, who had a pretty good result recently. So it was and Jez, who I work with, and Mark, who we also work with other shareholders. So three of our shareholders all worked at Jam Factory, and so did Radek, and so did Rhonda from Katut and Rhonda. So it was an all-star cast down there. But yeah, I forgot what I was saying.
So I was giving you a rhetoric question.
I think start harking on your point about the acquisition stuff. I think you sort of raised an interesting point. When we look for a business that we're buying, some of them come to us. Sometimes we, as a competitive process, sometimes we pick out people. But price isn't the only. It's certainly not the only determinant, and so an EBITDA multiple isn't the only. That's obviously a pretty major thing, but we look at what value this business will have to us. So when we did the Kudo thing, they obviously had a great business, and there was obviously a lot of overlap, but they had this business called Getaway Lounge, which had been so originally started by Nine, and then rolled into the Nine MSN Kudo business, and they sold travel products, and they leveraged off the Getaway show. So every Getaway show they'd have this special, and then go to Getaway Lounge, and they'd sell it. And we knew we had a really good expertise in travel, and we still do. It's our best business. And we thought, well, these guys have a really good travel database. These guys come from the Getaway show, so above the line, 2 years of heavy advertising. And we knew our deals were massively better than these guys. So we thought, we put our deals with this database, we can have a great revenue synergy. And that's exactly what happened. So we were able to. So we had a pretty good travel business back then. We were doing good deals with a lot of sort of boutique providers, but travel's been our biggest. We've sort of grown our travel business 100% year on year organically. So there was no acquisition really in that, except for the Getaway Lounge. And we did that by having a really good product, and really every week we learn. So we're constantly evolving the travel business. So we had Katrina Roundtree, and then now Lavinia for a long time has been our ambassador. So one of the real issues we have in the travel business, and it's to focus on the travel business because again it's along with homewares, probably our best business, is we realised when I said the local business was challenged, the beauty of travel is it is really scalable. So we started doing national travel. We started doing deals in Thailand and Bali and Queensland and whatnot, and they were getting great results because we could advertise to all of Australia and have one sales guy. So we were doing that, and then we were dealing with boutique kind of places and family-owned places, which are great places, but they weren't the big brand names. And when we did the Luxury Escapes thing, had Lavinia on board and started filming content and started doing a lot of above-the-line stuff, we gradually, one by one, started getting big name places, so from Marriott's to Hyatt's to now Starwood to Raffle to all these great brand names that had never advertised, had never been on really flash websites, certainly not in Australia. So as we grew the business, we had a much better calibre of clientele, so of merchant. And as we got better merchants, we had more customer trust. So one of our biggest issues we had in all the business, but especially travel, is trust. So when you're buying on an e-commerce business, there's always that risk, will this product come to me? And you can always get a charge back, but people generally don't think that way. So if you're buying a holiday, it's even 100 times more concerning. So you're buying a holiday in Thailand, you want to make sure that if you're buying from Luxury Escapes is actually a real business, because you don't want to rock up to Thailand and the hotel not exist, and you'd be in a bit of trouble. So getting that customer trust, even now, is still a challenge. We've done a huge amount of work around that trust issue. That's where Lavinia comes in, and that's where our brand partners come in.
It costs a lot of money though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it costs money, but we're very targeted, and we're absolutely devoted to ROI. So we won't spend any money on advertising without looking at how much return we're getting from it. And that's even a newspaper ad to whatever ad we're doing. We want to know what kind of return we're getting from it. Radio or TV or whatever we're doing. So as customer trust increased, we also were able to sell more product and get better. It was really a virtuous cycle in that business. So better partners, better customers, more customers. So that's sort of how that business has grown. And now we're at the point where our merchants will only want to work with us because we can move more volume than anyone else. We've got, well, certainly not a monopoly in any sense of the word. We've got a little bit of a brand that's now defensible and that people can now trust. So if I asked you 3 years ago, do you want to buy a holiday from Luxury Escapes? You say, oh, who the hell are you? I don't trust, that's too good to be true. But if 3 of your mates have gone on a Luxury Escapes holiday, it makes it far easier to spend $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever the amount is. And we've seen a really great organic growth rate year on year from people who just have heard it from word of mouth or referral or just those great trust indicators you can only really get from a friend or family member that's travelled on.
Referrals, customers are a lot better. They stick around longer. They usually spend a lot more. And I think it's largely due to trust. Depends on the industry, but we certainly see that a lot. No, that's really interesting. I'd love to step back a second to sort of the earlier days, because a lot of entrepreneurs, that cash flow issue, right? Particularly when you're investing in a technology product. So you're spending, for instance, the business that didn't succeed, you spent 30 or 40K on a product that actually didn't go anywhere, and that was to get the feedback from the market. Now, there's a book out called Lean Startup. Does anyone? I hate that book. And I love it and I hate it. It shows a really good idea in terms of testing your assumptions and getting validated learning. The problem is it costs you 40K to do it, right? And so this in terms of what you're doing there, a lot of entrepreneurs in the room, they're spending $30,000, $40,000 on a product. They're mortgaging their house or whatever it might be, and that to me, it's really difficult, because then they're testing the market. They might actually get the feedback they need to build the right product, but then they got to reiterate on that product, and they need to launch an entirely new marketing campaign, and that's really tough. There's just to reflect on what you were saying for a second, then I'll ask another question. There's one thing that I really liked hearing, and that was, that gave me some insights. That was that you actually had 70 or 80K. Was that correct? The bootstrapped or
our first business, we had about 100K between us, give or take. It was 12 years ago now, but we had, and that was our life savings essentially from working as a banker and me as a lawyer.
Life savings at 26, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, we were probably at 24 at the time. So it was, we both lived at home then, so it's pretty easy to save money. And so that was pretty much every dollar we had. And we pretty much sunk it all in. Like I think our bank account was down to a couple of grand each. I think we even borrowed money from our parents a bit as well, probably like 10,000 or something like that. It wasn't.
You can do that, or you can do a Kogan and talk to all your mates and get 70 grand worth of credit card debt. And does anyone know the Kogan story? Yeah, a couple. Yeah, so we basically put all the credit on his friends' credit cards, and worked out to be successful, but really tough if you fail. So that for me was a really good insight, and I'm actually hearing that when we have interviews, people are getting that first kickstart and gives them that ramp, that seed funding to actually then go and build a successful business. So yeah, I'm really curious to explore that idea, but maybe HR is another area that I'd love to look at. Hiring your first staff member. I think you said friends and family was a big influence, a big part of your organisation. Can you give me a rundown on your strategy there, just in terms of how you're hiring staff, how you're treating them? Are you giving them equity shares? What was the deal there?
Our first guy was a friend of Jeremy's. He came on as a shareholder. Then then there was another friend, someone who Jeremy lived with at one point, came on as a salesperson. And then we had like a CCAD and got someone, and she's still with us, and she's been great. And then we had a few more friends and family. So it was, I think the story is Yahoo's first 30 employees were friends or family. We weren't quite that level, but there was certainly a big chunk of friends and family early days. And quite a few of them are still with us. That second person's still with us as well. So, can I interrupt quickly?
Yeah. What was the reason you picked friends and family over people in the marketplace who you may not have that connection to, and you can probably push them?
I don't know. I'm not saying it's the right call, but it was what we did.
It was an intuitive call.
Yeah, I think it's just we knew people and we could trust them, and that was sort of what happened. There was not great thought behind it. Like I think a lot of this. I think a lot of our story is about luck. We were in the right place at the right time. Things went our way. The Getaway Lounge thing was really lucky. There's plenty of, the home thing was lucky. We've had a lot of luck along the way. And without that, we'd be still running an apartments business, no doubt. So there's a big element of that. And we happened to be able to execute at the time. And we didn't have families, and we could sort of risk it all, which which again was probably another factor of luck. Anybody, if you read the book Outliers, which is a great book, Malcolm Gladwell, who's fantastic, and he has some great stories, and that's a ripper read if you haven't read it. But one of the things he said, he makes some comparisons and how, and I've written a few articles about this, leveraging off him, but look at the first generation of computer guys, so Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all the Sun Microsoft, they're all born within 2 years of each other. And the reason being is in 1972, 73, when the first PC started to come out, all these guys were about 18. And if they were any younger, they'd be too young. If they're any older, they'd be in jobs with families, so that the risk profile changed. So we had a lot of luck in that respect too, that we were the right age for e-commerce. And so if you look at Ruslan's a similar age, and Gavin Hezzy and Katja are a similar age, and the Aussie guys a little bit older, but they came out of just slightly different background. But a lot of the e-commerce guys in Australia were a similar age to us, so it's not a coincidence. It was we're in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
In many respects. So in terms of hiring, we're certainly far from perfect at it. We've had some again, a lot of luck with hiring. So Lexi, who came via the home, was amazing, but we didn't hire her. We got her when we flukily got her when we bought the home. My wife has worked with us from very early days, and she's a superstar CFO, financial controller. So that was pretty lucky. Maybe not so lucky for her, but lucky for us. And we've had some really good staff stay with us over the journey. We've never been. We think we would pay people really well, and sort of we don't generally give huge equity grants out. We've been looking to put an options plan in place, but it's hard when you're a private company.
It's hard in Australia.
Yeah, it's hard in Australia. They're changing it now, and you can still use performance rights and that kind of stuff. But it's something that we're certainly looking to do, and if not simply for the money factor, but for the sort of alignment with staff. But we're lucky enough that we've got an amazing team. We've really built out our management team. And I think the one thing, I guess, that I learn as a CEO, and that all our executive directors learn is I guess the importance of having a great team around you. And we've been lucky in some regards, but we're now really at the point where we've got to invest in great people and try and find them and keep them and keep them everybody engaged, and not simply rely on lucky acquisitions and getting great people, which we've done thus far really well, and really focus on getting the best people in the business. And we think we've got probably one of the best. I actually think probably got the strongest management team in e-commerce in Australia, but we want to be doubly as strong as we are. So it's a constant challenge for all of us, and finding great people is hard.